Morning, Abe.
Good morning, Matt.
We are here on Broker Brew, Friday, October 4th. Is that right? Yeah. So,
Yeah, yeah,
and
absolutely. I can't believe we're already in October, which is crazy. It's wild. The year's going by really, really fast.
yeah, it's, and maybe for some people that's not necessarily a bad thing. With the,
Yeah, just get over with.
yeah, yeah. So you were saying that September was actually maybe the lowest amount of sales in real estate uh, in the 10-year history.
Yeah,
It's
yeah, in
looking
the
that
10-year
way.
history. Yeah, it seems that that's the case, and I hope it turns around. I know we've been feeling it, right, as people in real estate. And so the market has been challenging. It's been challenging now. Some people say for about 3 years or so, right? We're going into our third year of kind
Right.
of a downturn in actually the real estate market for us as realtors in terms of transactions and whatnot. Not
Right.
really a downturn in terms of prices, right? Those have been going up,
Right. Yeah.
and so it has been a very great season for some, and I also know a very challenging season for others. So there's always kind of two stories, in this market, but it does seem we're hitting kind of a new low. And you know, hopefully we see things turn around. So I think there's a projection from NAR that next year should be better, right? I think this year they're projecting something like 4.1 million in total sales across the country, whereas next year they're seeing just a small uptick.
Hmm.
4.3 million is what they're hoping for and projecting. It's based on various factors, of course, but one of the ones that we see right now happening is the interest rate having dropped from the high in October 2023 of close to 8% to now kind of on the national average like 6.1, I think is where we're at today ish. And I know locally here we've seen rates as low as like 5.5, 5.625 over the last few weeks, leading up to the
Yeah.
Fed cut. And so um, lot of moving parts it feels like, and it does feel like September we did hit kind of a low in transactions.
Yeah, yeah, and I think we might nationally be up a little bit higher than that. I think today the rates went up quite a bit, did they not? Um,
Yeah,
we
the
might be in the yeah.
we're probably
Um,
close to six. The bond market has been ticking up even as rates have been going down, which is unusual. But it feels like because of all the pressure on the treasury's been going up, the 10-year treasury,
yeah,
the yields have been going up, and so it feels like now that that news has hit and people are excited, that rates have ticked back up, and we know this too. Like I don't know if you track this also, but over the last few days, there's been like a correction market downward, stock market,
hmm,
but bank stocks have kind of held or gone up a little bit, right? We know that when there's rate movements like this, sometimes the benefactors are the banks, right? They can lag things, drag things a little bit to squeeze out a little bit more
right.
yield for themselves. So I don't doubt that's going on too. So it'll be like a up and down, I think, over the next few weeks, months, maybe years, in terms of rates.
Yeah, no, I think that's where there's people. I hear more and more people. I mean, it's taken a while to get a lot of people educated around the difference between like the Fed interest rate, right, versus the mortgage interest rates, and how and but what I've heard a lot more people kind of wrapping their heads around lately is just everybody talk to you is that things are kind of built in projection of what the Fed's going to do, right? So like there's a getting ahead of it, whether it be the markets, whether it be the 30-year mortgage rates, but there's kind of a built-inness, like they're anticipating it's going to happen. That's when they adjust. Once they feel like they have a good idea of where things are going to go, they'll build that in, and then either it'll be confirmed and then nothing much changes, or it can be like wrong from the up or downside, and things might then fluctuate. But a lot of times we have so much information nowadays and a lot more communication transparency that the built-in usually is pretty close, right? Like there's not that many surprises, although there are sometimes. But I think also just the idea that knowing what the 10-year treasury is doing will tell realtors much more what they think the 30-year mortgage is going to do more than the Fed rate. The Fed rate's one thing that affects it because that's kind of the Fed rate's kind of a bellwether of where economic policy is going, right, and where they're thinking, but it's not going to directly ever impact mortgage rates, other than in the fact that it's one factor that goes into 30-year mortgage rates, right? But really, it's the 10-year Treasury has a much more, typically it has kind of sometimes departed over the past, especially more recently in COVID. I think there was some departure, but the 10-year typically is going to be more in line with where the 30 years is going as far as up and down.
Absolutely. If you don't follow it already, if you're someone who tracks stocks and tickers and things, follow the ticker TNX. That's the 10-year Treasury yield. And so you can see it on a day-to-day, what's going on, if it's going up or down. And chances are, if it's going up, a big movement, rates are going to go up. If it's going down, rates will come down. And sometimes, again, there's a little lag to that, so that banks, can capture a little more profit, perhaps. So the other things that have been going on, and this is like news as of like I think yesterday or 2 days ago, right? Is the job numbers have come out, um, and the job numbers for September are better than expected. The
Right.
economy added 254,000 new jobs, which is higher than expected. The average number of jobs added in the last 12 months on a monthly basis was about 203,000. So it beat the average. I think part of what caused the Fed to drop the rate 50 basis points last meeting was that the August numbers were a little low, right?
Mm-hmm.
In August, there was only 159 new jobs, 159,000 new jobs added. And so it's much lower than the average for the last 12 months. So it may have been one factor that
Right.
caused the Fed to react, right? And then unemployment is down from last month at 4.2% to this month at September 4.1%. So we're seeing a little bit better, and you can see the markets reacting as we speak, right? And
Yeah.
stocks going up. So
Do you
yeah,
think?
so
Yeah.
yeah.
Good. No, good.
No, but there's just, I think a lot of people still scratching their heads. I am too, right?
Yeah.
With rates being in the fives, right? And people in the last 2 years have said, hey, if we can just get in the fives, like we'll be in a really good real estate market. Like just you wait, have your nets ready because there's just going to be like a outpouring of business. But in real time, like not sensing that or feeling that, fully and hearing that the transaction numbers are actually low right now. And so I know there's a lag effect to some things, right? Um,
Yeah.
but what is happening, I think, is a lot of people's questions. Are we going to be okay? Is the question we get on a daily basis almost from agents, just in passing or
Yeah.
even just calling to talk about it a little bit. And then agents wanting to take steps to not just wait for the market, but to be active and do something about the business and about the environment they're in now. And so there's a lot going on. There's just a ton going on, I feel like, and a lot of
Yeah.
uncertainty in things. And of course, election year is one of those things.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Do you think the jobs, that jobs report that was a little bit, not as strong, well, also on the tail of kind of that? Remember, there was that big revision in jobs created kind of just before that. So I wonder if that also played in a little bit to your thinking, like not only was there a big revision, but then also the next jobs report. So it's kind of like, hey, all this time we thought there were more jobs being created, and then now we're also seeing not as strong of a jobs report. I wonder how much that factored in.
I,
Um,
I think it's a huge one. When that revision came out, the market tanked quite a bit, and there
yeah,
was quite a bit of sell off in the stock market, right, and investments. And so yeah, so it's still unclear, right now. It's good news, September, and the market's reacting, but we'll see, I guess, soon what the lag effects are. And again, I still feel like there's tons of uncertainty that we're all dealing with, right? In our
yeah,
last sales meeting, we said consumer sentiment was pretty low, and when
yeah,
polled, 69% of Americans are still pretty worried about the economy at the very least, right, in the coming months and in the coming year. And so there's still a lot of, I don't know, just kind of mixed feelings and mixed bag, and people hoping, certain things, getting better leads to, a better economy or a better real estate market and whatnot. It still feels like there's still a holdout right now. There's still like I guess we're still waiting and seeing what the impact of everything will be.
yeah. Yeah, I think the number one issue in the election this year is the economy, right? So usually that's not when the economy's good that's the number one thing, right, as far as like, or the perception of the economy, because I know there's a lot of talk about like whether the economy is as bad as people think it is, and it's more just the uncertainty around the economy that people are worried about necessarily, that's a bad economy for a lot of people, right? I mean, inflation, we know inflation's there, so that's always a concern, and I think that may be kind of what people, I think that's really the economy right now people are worried about, is the inflation aspect. And now more recently, to combat inflation, you've got um, job loss fears because sort of that. And I wonder that the back to work thing just came on strong. I don't know about you. I had not gone to a movie. It felt like maybe once since COVID happened, maybe once in like 3 years, right? But yeah, I went to, like, I found myself, I went to two movies, I think, last month, and maybe I was even going to go to one more. It didn't work out, but the point was, it just seems like the back to work that Amazon just imposed, some other back to works that we've heard about, maybe it's not going to kill jobs as much as people think, or like affect people's job. Maybe people are willing to go back. Maybe people are, especially if they are worried about their jobs. I'm just curious how that's going to play out, actually, just see how that affects jobs. Like if that's going to have any attrition results, with making people go back to work, or to the office. I should say go back to the office, not go back to work. Maybe
Yeah.
for some it is go back to work, but no, it was a go back to the office. But yeah, so it'd be interesting how the jobs reports are going to be kind of factored in if that trend starts right now. Um, you know,
Yeah, like movie tickets are relatively low ticket in terms of price for family entertainment, things like that. Did you share about what you experienced at Disneyland recently? Because
oh
that's a
yeah,
pretty high ticket item for families to enjoy.
yeah, I did see that. So there's a night, a Halloween night at Disneyland called Oogie Boogie. It's basically based on the what's the guy's name? The guy did like Edward Scissorhands. What's his name? The
Tim
Burton,
Burton?
Tim Burton. So it's based on Nightmare Before Christmas. Tim Burton thing, kind of like theme. A lot of the theme is around that, and then they bring in a lot of other villains and things like. But anyway, that doesn't matter. The point is, it's a night where you can typically go. If you're into that, a lot of people get dressed up and go. But we typically have gone because it's a way to get on rides pretty quick, because no one's really going on the rides. Everybody's kind of walking around, and the park shut down to the public, so you can kind of get on rides. So there's a tip for you guys that want to do that. So, but you have to pay a little bit more, and even though we have pass, we still pay for that. It's kind of a tradition at this point. But what I noticed was, like, we're getting on rides, and normally, let's say it takes 15 minutes to get on Guardians of the Galaxy, which is that one that drops. It used to be Tower of Terror. You know, it was like 5 minutes to get on it, and then I noticed, just every ride is like, hey, this is really fast. I don't remember it being this fast. And then when we went to the parade part, it used to be like people had to line up like, an hour before to get a good spot. And I know we just kind of walked to a spot, got a great spot, better spot than we've ever got before. And it was like within 5 minutes of the parade starting. And so it just kind of told me, okay, there's not as many people here. I haven't seen any official numbers from Disney if they put those out. I don't think they put those out, but like it'd be interesting to see. I think that higher ticket item, to pay for that, it's kind of a luxury thing to have, right? To do that. And there's just not as many people out there. So I'm wondering if that's sort of a bellwether in some way. My own little research, but yeah,
I think we all see it. We all feel it in different ways, and we're hoping it doesn't last long or it's not going to go too deep, But I think as we talk to agents too, there are certain homes that are taking longer to sell, certain higher priced homes where I think that the verbatim was, it is eerily quiet or it's crickets right now, in terms of
mhm,
people coming to see the home or just calls in the home. So I think we all feel it and we all sense something. And part of it is the natural slowdown with seasonality, right? We're in October, like we said, happened
yeah,
pretty quick. I don't even think it's set into my mind how late in the year we are. It still feels like we're pushing on a lot of things, right? And it's still kind of in that, like, the thick of the work year versus like what feels like a shutdown, or like a slowdown time. So it's weird to kind of clash against that, and know that we are in October and Thanksgiving, Christmas are right around the corner.
yeah,
So yeah, but there is a lot going on in the world, and I know you and I have had conversations about that pretty recently, and also with some of our agents and just our friends and family, right? And I know that sometimes we can get into a real estate like tunnel vision in some ways, and what we're
right,
talking about, what we're thinking about, the media that we're consuming. right? Like, what is real estate going to do? What's happening in real estate? What are the talking heads in real estate saying, and all that? But it felt like maybe it was a good time to take our heads out of that tunnel, right? And to talk a little bit about what we see going on in the world.
Yeah. No, I think the a lot of the uncertainty that's layered on top of like the economic uncertainty is sort of the um I think that we're at least I'm experienced that more people are being affected around us, like by stuff going on in the world, like especially good stuff going on in the Middle East. I think there's a lot. I was, um, you know, whether it's obviously always a third rail to touch on, right? As far as like to talk about these things, but I do think it's important to at least speak to the human side of this, that to not dismiss people based on their views, maybe understand more where people are coming from, because everybody's affected by this different personally. If you're fortunate enough to not, like, I'll say this personally, I am personally very myself, my family, my is not very much touched by anything going on in the world personally, but I know people that are more, right? And we know people that are more. And I think it's important to talk to those people, in a sensitive and listening and hearing what they have to say, rather than to, because I think we know that American policy does play into the world a lot. Like we have our hands in a lot of things. So voting on things in America does affect things overseas and over the world and things like that. But I think that the human part of this, and understand that a lot of people are actually directly affected by this is, I think, a really important thing, the perspective to have, and get through the rhetoric of sides. And a lot of people, I don't know, they might be fanning flames they don't know they're fanning. I'm not being discounting to people. I'm just saying it's very complicated, because even myself, sometimes I hear a new piece of information, I go, oh man, like I didn't know that, and so there's so much to unravel there. So I think it's just, probably better to right now listen if you're not very educated on what's going on in the world in these countries and conflicts. And then, I don't know, I'm not saying sit it out, like don't have any kind of opinion, or do anything about it, but I think maybe the more place to not sit out is to actually by getting involved with people that are affecting that conversation and connections, right? With people, and hear how it's affecting them, and just listen a lot more than talk, right? When it comes to this. Um,
Yeah, yeah, and I think we said this in our last sales meeting too, that sometimes we can get out of touch with what is happening in the greater world of things, especially just being in real estate, and for us being in the real estate business and always constantly digesting what's happening with this, what's happening with that, what's going on with that NAR settlement, what's happening in the market, right? What are the new like creative things in the real estate business that we should look at? What's the new technology? What are the new methods that people are really finding success with? Like all that stuff. But I think we thought it was important just to take a step back and know that people are being impacted by what's going on in the world beyond just like us reading a headline, right? And knowing that somewhere far away, there's bombs in the air, there's people dying, right? Those things. Um, and I think what sometimes the topic here is like, well, there's a lot of fake news going on. I'm sure there is, and that's not we're here to like validate or disprove, like disprove or take a side on. But there is a lot happening, and it's undeniable that it's happening. We have war on two fronts. It looks like. We have just a lot of things going on, a lot of uncertainty that's caused from that, and then yeah, a lot of death and destruction that's happening in the world. I say that laughing, knowing that that's not what we normally talk about on a day-to-day basis, right? Is death and destruction and war and things. But I think it's important to know it's happening, it's affecting people, and it's affecting people closer to you than you think, maybe, right? And again, I'm lucky too. It's not affecting my family or any of my relatives, but we have people close to us where literally it's affecting their families. Their homes are
yeah.
no longer there, right?
Hmm.
And they need to deal with that, right? And so we say that to say, hey, like it is like obvious, but life isn't all about real estate transactions and the latest things happening in real estate. And I think when we take a step back, sometimes what we need to be in practice of is just like returning back to being like a normal human being, right? And finding out what other human beings are dealing with, thinking about, struggling with, celebrating, and having the conversations with people in that sense. And there's a lot to talk about. There's a lot of things happening. I know some people too, they're doing really well in their careers and their business. They're buying new stuff, new cars, all that stuff, going to vacations. And then there's people like literally in that midst that are struggling, and have, maybe some difficulty financially with, all kinds of difficulty, right? And so I've been checked a lot of times in my life where I feel like I'm complaining about something, not making as much money as I once did, or whatever it was, like,
Right.
and then a friend checking me and saying, "Hey, you're kind of offending me because I hear you, but your
Yeah.
scale of that type of suffering and what I think I'm dealing with, or people are dealing with in general, is not the same, right?" And so,
Yeah.
um, and so,
Well, I
like,
think that, yeah.
yeah.
Well, no, I think we were talking about like we use the word humans a lot, right? With Circa, we talk about human, and I think that that's where you think about like it's a let's say you hear people talk about a people business, right? Like it's a people business, or people say I'm a people person, right? And I think that I'd like to think about switching that to like just human, like I'm a human person, right? Like I mean, I care about humans and I want to be a good human, and because I think people person sounds like maybe that you're really good at talking to people, or you're really good, like you're really outgoing, which is good, nothing wrong with that. But I think just change it to human, where it's like striving rather than for being persuasive or being like good with people. Like how about like being connected to humans, like being someone who can connect with humans really well, right? And that's kind of what we're going to talk about a little bit too, is that seeking connection with people, or with humans, I should say, right? Rather than, feeling like I'm a certain amount of skills towards working with people, right? It's more like, no, I pride myself in someone who seeks to always to connect with people, with humans, and and I feel like that's where this discussion of the world and what's going on is like maybe it's more important now than ever with all the different kind of pent up hostilities people have and sort of like quick judgments people are making about this or that is it's more important than ever now to try to be a connector, someone who connects with people. Um, yeah, I'm using people, but it's okay. Connect with people, connect with humans, and really be a person that influences others to do the same if you can, to try to let that be something you're about right now in the season. Is to take a step back from some of the other typically like knee jerk or typical kind of like things we do, and go deeper to the connection route, with everybody.
Absolutely. There's still things like in our industry that we cringe about in regards to this, right? And
Yeah.
we've talked a lot about like tactic driven sales and things like that. And I've had a couple of run-ins this last week with some of that, myself, and we get asked the question a lot, like, what do I need to be doing as a real estate agent? How do I grow the business and whatnot? And it's kind of a weird thing. We said that this morning, right? It's like, to grow your business, don't grow your business, right? It was like kind of a weird, like Zen, like, kind of, contradictory thing. And so it felt like we should talk about it and be specific about it. And, again, what I came across this week was, I'm hunting for solar right now. Um, I live in an area where there's been some landsliding, and I'm
Mhm.
not directly impacted, but as a result of it, I think the whole hill that I live on is like thinking about, creating their own grids or being, self-sufficient, right? And so solar has been a big part of that. Propane tanks above ground or shared tanks amongst neighbors has been a big part of that. I live in an area where like 200 some odd homes have been evacuated over the last few weeks. And now power is being cut off or intermittent in certain houses, because of this
Yeah.
landsliding. And so, I had an experience of reaching out to solar companies, and I could tell that right away I was put into their funnel of like, marketing and referral making and
Right.
things like that. And the specific thing I got was, hey, with this solar company, we haven't even consummated a deal yet, but I'm getting texts like over and over from them. Hey, I don't know if you got my text, but are there like three people you can think of that might benefit from solar? You have like $1,000 incentive if you give us a name where, it's like, no, I don't. I don't even know if I'm going to do, the solar panels with you, right? So
Right.
there's little things like that, and then literally, this was yesterday. I keep getting a call from a number I see repeated on my phone, so I finally picked up, and I felt like it was a telemarketer probably, but picked it up finally, and it was a guy on the phone talking about mortgages, and I just said, "Hey, can you just take me off your list? I'm in the business and don't need the service, he was like, no, just give me 20 seconds and it's going to absolutely change your life. And I was like, really? You're going to change my life in 20 seconds? And so I entertained it for 20 seconds and it did not change my life. But it was like the line he used to keep me on the phone. It was effective, but by no means was there any delivery on that.
Well, it's
So
effective
it's
in
just,
keeping you on the phone for 20 more seconds.
exactly,
That was
exactly.
his
But
goal.
unfortunately, exactly. It did not change my life any bit. In fact, it
Maybe he gets a
detracted 20
bonus
minutes.
if he keeps the call 30 seconds.
I wouldn't doubt that, right? I wouldn't doubt that.
Yeah.
Or like to log, hey, that line worked, right? Bam. I had one success today in
Yeah.
that, right? So it's just funny that there's a lot of that in our industry too. And when we talk to agents about, how to grow a business or what to do in business, like there are some default methods that we go to, right? and
Yeah.
and in some ways, um, like we forget the context in which we live, right? When you have conversations with people in real estate, a lot of people are complaining about how many cold calls they've been getting recently, especially, or weird text messages with links on them, right? Or like kind of provocative like questions, right? Like, hey, how are you? How are you been doing? You have like no idea who this person is, and they're not saved on your
Yeah.
phone. And we're inundated with these things, right? Completely inundated. But then at the same token, we say, hey, when we think about growing the business or doing our own marketing, we default to some of the same noise.
Right. Yeah. No, it's funny, like, well, I should say, I think that what you and I both would admit, and tell me if I'm wrong, is that there's these we're not saying some of these tactics don't work, right? Like maybe that 20-second does get the one dude that stays on and does change his life, you know what I mean? And he gets, right. So I get that. But the point is, and I'll say, go back to one more thing further is I think I sent you a thing the other day from a big real estate TV star guy that's now selling like training to people, right? And I think it was said, and finally achieved the reason you got into this business, right? And I was like, okay, what is it? It's like to cash those commission checks, right?
Right.
And I thought to myself, like, is that the reason we got into the business? I mean, I know we got into the business to make money. Every business is to make money, right? But I think what everybody gets in the business of real estate for is to live a better life, right? Like because of the work life balance that it promises. And I know, there's a lot of realtors out there that joke like, yeah, yeah, right, right. But I get that. But the reason people get into it, whether they find that or not, if I was going to say the reason you really got into this business for, I would say is to live a good life, right? To live a life of more options and opportunities because of the income, and then also the ability to take advantage of those opportunities because of the fact that you make your own schedule. So hey, if I want to go to every one of my kids soccer games or practice and never miss it, I can do that. I have a boss that's going to tell me I can't, although we all know that, yeah, you have customers that want to go see houses. So I understand that it's not as easy, but that's the reason people get into it, I think. And if you break about the money, so I guess my point of that is I don't think you can separate getting that finally to that balance and getting to that place where you're making good money, have those opportunities without doing things what I would consider the right way. And I think that's what it is. It's like, yes, there's a lot of ways that things can work, but when you're doing tactical, not even manipulative, let's take one step back from manipulative, um, maybe gimmicky or any sort of way that's you're going to attract what you put out, right? People who might be susceptible to those messages or those tactics are going to be also the people who might not be your ideal customer to allow you, you're not going to have customers that are looking out for you, right? We all have customers that sometimes say, hey, I don't want to bother you, or hey, I don't want to, like, no, don't worry about it, we can talk in the morning, or hey, let's, looking out for you. Hey, are you making good money on this deal? I want you to make good money. You deserve it, right? Versus the people who are going, hey, I need to talk to you now. Hey, I want to go see this house now. Do I need to call somebody else? Right? Hey, like, no, we need to talk right now. Like, call me right now. I called you like 7 times during dinner time, and you're like, I was about to call you back, but you called 7 times in a row. Or the people who are like, hey, I know you're making good money on this. I think I should get some of that back. You know, and if you find yourself that more of those type of clients, it's what you're putting out. It's how you're approaching the business yourself. And so, there's no in my opinion, there's no way around that. Like, and living a good life means that you do have that autonomy, I think, to do what you want to do each day, and real estate, and you can't do that unless you have the money, typically, because if you don't have the money, you can't just do what you want to do each day. But you also have to have the business set up in such a way that you do that way. And I'm not saying you don't work hard, that you're not working a lot of hours. All businesses take that. Hopefully you don't mind that, you don't hate working a lot. But I think it's the way the people you work with, and the energy that they either give or take, there's no way of separating that from the life you live, and having a good life around you. So I think that's where I think it's important to say, like, we're not saying, hey, those tactics don't work. Obviously they work, because people are still doing them. People are still peddling them to other agents. But we're just trying to convince people maybe there's a better way, and maybe there's another way that you can conduct yourself, right. That's not that going to attract those people.
Yeah, it doesn't seem, well, our better way doesn't seem quite direct all the time, it feels like. And by
Yeah.
no means are we saying, hey, don't work on the business, don't hone your craft, don't be good in terms of like setting up business systems that help you, stay optimal and keep in touch with people or whatnot, and using technology to do that, and by no means are we saying don't do any of that, right? Sit in a room somewhere and just put good vibes out into the earth, and then those good vibes will return back. We're not saying that fully, right? We are saying start with yes, like the meaningful connections you want to build, the mission of what you're doing, right, and why you're doing it. I can almost guarantee you, if it's just money you're after, there are other ways to make money. In probably easier ways, right? Sometimes than being a real estate agent or being in real estate, and that there may be, if it's just money, things that are more fulfilling to you. But if there's a mission here for you in this business, I promise you, you'll last much longer, and you'll find more almost like inner strength to do it, and to work at it and be great at it. And so we deal with that a lot. We have people that come to the brokerage um, in like a lot of different forms and from a lot of different backgrounds, a lot of different experience levels, a lot of different like sales kind of mentalities too. And it's very interesting to see that, I'd say probably the majority of people are driven by the dollar, right? They're driven by the earning potential and just maximizing their earning potential right here, right now. And they've almost skipped over some of the hard work it takes to really settle yourself into why you're doing what you're doing, and if this is what you really want to do. And so I do see some people, agents, as they're facing difficulties, even when they're busy, even when they're making great money, start to like question, um, should I be doing this right now? Then we've talked about this too. Like, should I just open up like a coffee shop somewhere, right? Or like get into e-marketing, or e-commerce somewhere, and they look outside the window, like looking for greener pastures in some ways. And we all do that. I think we're all human, right? And so we do face times where we question what we do, but I do see sometimes a more resolve in people, or a settledness, or even a drive to be better at what they do and to like solve for the problems that are giving them the pain, rather than like seeking an out, immediately. And so yeah, so it's about, and I kind of want to share this, Matt. We've started to meet with smaller groups of people to really talk about this. And I think we're pitching the group as like, hey, a way to like up your game in the business, right? And it's it's not going to be the same, or it's not going to be a thing that people are predicting to come to, meaning, hey, here's all the new tactics, right, that we want to employ starting with you guys, right? It literally is starting with, who are you? Right? And what do you want to put out there into the world, right? And the conversation is around like branding yourself or whatnot. But if we took those like technical terms or those like business terms out, it really is, who are you and what do you want to put out, right? And in those
Right.
meetings, we came up with like a very simple mission statement, right? I'm not sure this is going to carry for the entire company, but this is like the mission statement we want to put out in these groups so that people start to just think about things more broadly versus like the latest tactic or like where my farm is going to be fully, right? And I'll read it just for this sake. But again, this is not our company mission statement yet. We haven't fully adopted this, but it is something we're putting out there just to get people in the right mind frame. And it really is, the mission is to stay in touch meaningfully with your current relationships, make exciting new relationships, and work hard to deliver the most amazing real estate experience to all. Pretty simple and pretty boiled down. Um, and so I think sometimes we get a little too complex in what we're trying to do. And sometimes it's a reaction to what we think people want and us not feeling like we have that, right? And so we have to learn these new techniques and tactics, quote unquote, to be able to deliver that. And it's sometimes us like feeling like, um, no, what I have isn't good enough to be able to succeed, right? And so I have to kind of become someone else or something else, right?
Yeah.
And why we're starting with the question of, well, who are you and what do you want to put out there, is because we do feel like the more you understand that and know that and feel confident in that and believe in that and settled in that way, the more successful you'll be. Actually, we can work on that once you're grounded in that, in that question.
Yeah, no, yeah, I think that's where I always believe that it's just working on yourself as a person, right? That is the most important thing you can do in your business, as of working on who you are, and we can talk a little more about how that is done, but you know, choosing to be around the people you feel are have things you don't have, to catch things from them, to learn things from them, and then to have an allergy to tactics that are not rooted in substance of making you better. And I'll say that it's like, we the like if a pitcher is teaching another pitcher, like, hey, you know how you get your slider to do, I don't know a pitcher, so is put a little Vaseline in your baseball cap, right, and get that, you know what I mean, and that's what they're teaching you, right? Versus like, hey, no, what you gotta do is just work on the technique and work on this, right? Like, well, and I think that's where a lot of people, they want these kind of quick shortcuts, or short like kind of tactics, and like, oh, I got, this, and like when I catch nuggets, it's never like the tactic. It's the nugget I try to catch is, how did they say, like, that person, how are they coming across, like, who are they, like, where are they, like, how's that person conducting themselves and why are they conducting, like, go to the substance of what's happening and who they are, like kind of catching who they are and the essences of that, versus like, oh, that's a clever, I mean, I'm not saying that there's not clever things you can do if it makes things more efficient, or or have some sort of ways of doing something a little bit better. I mean, like, there's methods. You can talk about methods, right? As far as, hey, you can do this. Like, for instance, you know, catering a home inspection is a great method to, like, encompass that experience, right? That's a way of doing something, right? But we're not talking about, hey, but if you say this one thing, then it's like, and it's like that they're not rooted in real um, substance of doing the right thing, having an amazing experience, right? Like some sort of tagline you say at the end of something, and it's like that makes all the difference, right? Where it's not rooted in substance. So, but back to what you were saying as far as, like the the mission of the building relationships, find exciting new relationships, and I think the key word there is that exciting, right? Like, of really push yourself to go out and find people that are exciting to have relationships with, not people you think I can get something from them, because they're not that exciting. They're just someone you can use to get something you want, right? Push yourself in your life to find exciting people that uplift you, that make you better. that clients that maybe challenge you because you know that they have a problem that you've got to figure out, and they're maybe at a higher level of what they need, and that's going to make you better at what you do versus like shooting fish in a barrel, right? Kind of thing, thinking of that, and not to say that again, you want to grow a business, you want to do well, but think about always that growth and that real substance within yourself, and try to be true to that.
Yeah, absolutely. We were talking about this too. I thought it was really interesting. I think, again, it's hard as you and I are like leaders in our business, right? And in a business, it's interesting to bring these type of things up and bringing them up continually, um, and not continually bring up new tactics and stuff. I think what would be expected of us is like, okay, here's like the next five things like that the industry's doing. Here's the next like five marketing things like you need to do. Um, and it's uncomfortable for us too, right? To kind of peel this off and kind of say, hey, this is kind of our methodology. This is like our key to our business success and how we feel like we're going to grow. And so I'll say that it feels counterintuitive in some ways, for us as well. It'd be easier for us to get on this, YouTube thing, right, and say the things that are going to go viral, right, or the snippets that we think the world wants to hear, so that we get more eyes on this and in turn grow our business, right? But I think what you and I are working on is also just trying to be really true to ourselves and up our game too, right? And to always improve on ourselves and our methodology and even our thinking and understanding of things. But to let that be what helps grow the company, let that be what helps grow us, right? And
Yeah,
then hopefully grow those around us too, right? And it is
yeah.
awkward. I mean, we've got to be honest
Well,
about that. It's not the
yeah.
direct way to the goal, right?
Well, and I think there's a great amount of respect rooted in that for our agents. Meaning, I think I've been in the real estate industry long enough, and I've studied it long enough, and I've watched almost anybody out there that's coached one way or another. I've been at different brokerages and gone to their seminars, and I've watched their stuff. And I think that rooted in a lot of the thought leadership is really a goal of convincing people that they are like an authority that they need to listen to do these tactics, and you'll be successful. And they know that it's effective because they know that a lot of realtors are living in a mode of frequent self-doubt, frequent desperation, even, right? And so it's a real easy sell that instead of 20 seconds and I'll change your life, it's like, hey, $299 and I'll change your life, right? Or, buy my course and I'll change your life. And I think that, we all have seen it, like in the world, like, with infomercials late at night, like, I'll make you this much money. If you're like all of us, we probably get those things where like work from home, like every time you see a comment on a social, it might be like, hey, work from home, it changed my life. I mean, there's so much gimmick and there's so much, and yet there's so many really charismatic, talented, and influential people in our industry that are really good at making you think like, if I pay $300 for this course, like it's going to change my life. And I'm not saying that there's not value in any of those things. There are, but I think what we're saying to people is that you are in this business as an sort of an entrepreneur to some degree, as a human who wants to just improve their life around them. Maybe you're not like you know, what you would consider yourself to be like a visionary entrepreneur, but you're still somebody who's decided to take control of your own professional life and start a business. And so I think what we want to do is respect you, that you will have to figure a lot out of this stuff for yourself and to some degree within like what works for you, right? But that we want to give you like the guide rails of some sort of philosophy and of some mindsets and some things to think about as you do things. And you're going to find ways of doing business out there. You're going to trip over it all day. But I think what we have is respect that we believe you each out there at Circa, at least, and hopefully other people hearing this, is like that Mark Zuckerberg didn't read a book or take a course on how to become a CEO. Steve Jobs didn't read it, right? What they did have, though, is they had ecosystems of other people who they put themselves around who were smart people and who they were able to build off and catch things from and understand and learn the world of how they needed to do to build their companies. And what you think about any of those people, it doesn't matter. If you look at like the PayPal mafia guys, which are Reid Hoffman, who started, LinkedIn and a bunch of other companies. Peter Thiel, who has one of the most valuable companies in Palantir, with that all the government uses for data. Elon Musk, who we know Elon Musk, what he's done. David Sachs, who started Yammer and all sorts of other like startup companies, been involved in that world. These guys all were around each other and they grew off of each other and they learned from each other. And you hear stories of them telling that they learned whole ways of running one part of a business from one of the other ones, just being around them, right? And so I think just having the respect for you out there is like, be around other people that are doing and learn from each other, but always in the substance of how do I do what I'm doing better? How do I become the most competent individual I can be for this craft of real estate, right? And again, it's not gimmicks and tactics will never build a fortress, right? They'll build like a little temporary, teepee, a little temporary little tent, but it's not going to build a fortress of a business. The tactics won't do that. That's a terrible analogy, but I think you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Building something that's really significant.
Those guys also failed at times and learned from each other's failures.
Yeah,
And, you know, Elon Musk was outed at one point from his own, what was it, X at the time, but went PayPal eventually. But he was outed there. And, um, you know, years, decades later, here we have the richest man in the world, right? And so he in a sense failed there, but he was around that court and they still stay in touch, right? I see them all the time hanging out or on each other's podcasts or whatnot, right?
yeah,
And so
yeah,
they're in touch. And so yeah, the people you're around, that sense, like there's so much to glean from them. And that's valuable versus like, hey, what tactic are they employing over there? That's where sometimes that does come into play. But so I think that's interesting. And the primary reason why some of these groups we're launching are small and relationship focused and almost like turned towards one another is directly that. I think you and I can get really tired really quick, trying to be the sole, like, I don't know, like deal fixer or like, hey, tell me how to grow my business, right? Voice for agents. That there's so much more rich learning and experience when you unleash other people to share there as well, right? And to share that helped them succeed and what has helped them, or what failures they've seen and how they learn from those things, right? And so yeah, it's kind of the philosophy we're trying to embed into the fabric of our company in that sense, right?
yeah,
Um, and for that reason, it is a little bit more, how do I say it, like ethereal, right? Like just a little bit more in the air, a little bit more caught than taught, right? It is those things, and really, some of the things we may suggest are going to feel like standing the floor or wax on, wax off,
oh, right, right,
right?
yeah,
Right?
yeah,
Yeah. And not so much like, hey, here's how you punch, here's how you kick, right? And where you and I see eye to eye, like very deeply on, is the core of a person really is what kind of creates success and long-term success and longevity versus like the superficial things outside, right?
yeah,
And so in some ways, again, not to get too deep, right? Because we're not like licensed, therapists in any way or psychiatrists or whatever, right? We're just two guys that have been around a lot of people, have done this business for a while and seen a lot of things and had a lot of conversations. And two guys who are pretty generally our dispositions like love people, meet people, connect with people, and draw meaningful, connections with people. And so we're saying that this from that standpoint. And yes, we do sprinkle in, of course, a lot of real estate stuff, right? We've got those chops, but it isn't going to be that direct in that sense. And one of the things, when we talk with certain people, we know that what they need sometimes isn't a business planning session. Um, it is like one step, like maybe away from that. It's actually, you might need a therapy session, right? You might need to talk about some of the mentality things, or like the mindset things, or some of the reactive things that you have, that are coming out in the business, or giving you hesitations on things, or fears about certain things, and maybe like skewed perception on certain things that are keeping you back, versus like not knowing, the best tactic, in that sense. And
Yeah.
um, so
And I and
yeah,
I think you mean, like, when you say therapy, and I mean, I don't think, we all joke in real estate that we're kind of like therapists sometimes, right, with our clients and stuff, and talking through, and I think we are talking about a layer beyond that when you were mentioning that. Like, yes, I've had conversations with agents where it goes deep. Like, we talk about really deep things in their life. The challenge is I'm not a licensed therapist of any sort. I think I can help people through a lot of things because we've all been through them, right? And I think that I've talked to a lot of people. I've talked to a lot of agents. I have a lot of perspective from those different conversations. Oh, I think my ear said so. I mean, switch my mic real quick. But I've had a lot of people that have um, you know come to me with really problems over the years. Um, and I think I've helped in some ways, and some ways I feel like it's beyond what I can do. But I think we're talking about, like, literally, like, there's some things that are deep in a lot of us, like, maybe, like, going to someone with, like, therapy is not a bad thing, right? As far as, I know some people stigmatize it. I don't think it's true. I think it's just having, like, a really good friend who can listen, and you don't worry about what you say with them at all, right? I've never really benefited from it myself, but I've thought about it for years that I should. It's more one of those things that's like on those things, like it's like golfing for me. Like, I should golf, right? I should get, and so, but I mean, I've sought out other ways, but I do think that it's definitely something people should consider. And I guess I could say this one thing right here, like, because in line with this, I was talking about with you before. I think that I've caught myself, and I think a lot of people would probably benefit from doing the same, is not putting enough silence into their days, right? Not having enough space to let things be still and let your own mind kind of give you some feedback on what you're going through. Um, whether it's as in depth of a meditative practice where you actually meditate and intentionally do that, or whether it's just that when you're driving in the car, rather than putting on a song or a podcast or anything else you listen to, just driving in silence and just think. Because a lot of times there's some things that our mind can tell ourselves in those still moments of things that you should maybe consider, that you need to prioritize more in your life. And I just feel like, because I mean, all of us are sometimes, from the moment we wake up, we're going, and we've got other people's demands on us, and we've got our own anxieties about what we need to get done today, and things that are going wrong with maybe deals, or all sorts of things. I don't have to tell anybody here that. The point is, getting some stillness, getting some moments of that quiet, I think will do you well, and so I just highly recommend making sure you're putting that practice in.
100% agree there. And then even like writing or journaling. I'm in the practice of writing and journaling, not as maybe prolifically as I'd like, but definitely at certain stages. And um, for myself, I do it probably 3 times of the year, where I do a really wholesale kind of inventory on what
Maybe like,
I'm thinking about. Um, Matt, okay, I'm just going to talk a little bit, and then I'm sure you'll come back in. But yeah, to journal and to take time to ask yourself questions about what is going on in your own life, what you've been thinking about, what the challenges are, and all those
I
things.
lost total.
Can you hear? Uh-oh. This is not uncommon of Matt to have technical difficulties. So I'm just going to keep talking for a sec. Yeah, so to be in that practice, and Matt and I have talked about this fairly recently. We have some resources in regards to that. We're designing also some like more like discovery and self-care type of modules for some of the things that we do in training. and also trying to better your business. But I am someone who has, done a fair share of therapy, right, and almost a decade of it, and have seen a lot of benefits from it. And I didn't see benefits from it right off, right out the gate. But after years of understanding what it is, and even working on the things that that your therapist kind of gives you, you see the fruits of it years and years later, and it's pretty heavy lifting. So I don't say, hey, people should be in therapy just as like a flippant thing, but I do sense that that for many of us that's something that's absolutely necessary. And again, it's one of those like things that doesn't directly seem to impact your business, but it is one of those things that I promise you there'll be fruits of, and there'll be fruits from, and it'll impact way more than your business. So, Matt, do we have you back?
Maybe
I don't think we have him back. Okay, so I think we'll probably wrap there. And maybe the last thing I can say for us is, if you're interested in any of that or need some resources on any of that, please do let us know. Again, we're developing something that touches on some of that. Neither I or Matt are licensed people in that field, although we have a lot of just people experience. But we do think there's going to be some integration of that into kind of our real estate practice and what we do in terms of these small groups that we're running. So, so yeah, with that said, Matt, do we have you back? Okay, I don't think we have him back, so I'm just going to write him a text here. If there's any questions or anything, again, that we can address in these broker brews, we'd love to hear from you. We haven't gotten too many topics from people, and so yeah, please do let us know in the comments maybe what you'd like us to touch on or talk about, or any opinions you have on things that we've been talking about, so that we can make these times really beneficial to you. Other than that, I am going to give Matt the two thumbs up sign to end right now, and hope you guys have a great weekend. Have a great weekend.